Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's episode I shall be reviewing the Re.2000 G.A, an Italian fighter aircraft coming to tier of 1 and a battle rating of 2.0. For the purposes of today's historical overview, I'll be carrying on from where we left off when we originally reviewed the Reggiani Re.2000 Series 1, a link to which is available in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now, as the Re.2000 G.A marks the third and final variant of the Re.2000. With that, let's begin. With the Italian government keen to field a fighter which could directly fly from Italy to Ethiopia to reinforce the Regia Aeronautica unit stationed out there in 1941, Regia Aeronautica translating into Italian Royal Air Force, the Re.2000 Series 3 arrived hot on the heels of the preceding Series 2. Unlike the Series 2, the Series 3 was intended for service at the Regia Marina, the Italian Royal Navy. Powered by the same Piaggio P11 Biz RC40 1025 horsepower 14-cylinder radial engine and still armed with two 12.7mm Breda-SAFAT machine guns as mounted in the nose with 300 rounds per gun. However, unlike its predecessor, the Series 3 was fitted with additional internal fuel tanks located behind the cockpit. These extended the plane's range from 545 km or 339 miles to 950 km or 590 miles. This converted the aircraft into a long-range fighter, warranting the revised designation of Re.2000 G.A, G.A standing for Grande Autonomia, or Great Autonomy in literal English, Series 3. The additional fuel capacity came at the cost of increasing the plane's mass, reducing the plane's maximum speed from 530 km an hour, or 329 miles per hour, at 5,300 meters altitude, or 17,388 feet, to 520 km an hour, or 323 miles per hour. This drop in performance was not seen as an issue by the Regia Aeronautica, leading to the new variant being accepted for service with a total of 24 Re.2000 G.As being produced. The Re.2000 G.As would be deployed over the Mediterranean Sea as fleet escort or TAC aircraft, being retired from service by September of 1942 due to concerns over the reliability of the plane's engine. So with our historical overview concluded, let us take a look at how the Re.2000 G.A handles in the skies of War Thunder Arcade. Today's gameplay is brought to you from the Ground Strike map Greece. For this we'll be using the following setup. Stealth belts are machine guns, the reasoning being in my experience the stealth belts have yielded the most consistent results as applied over multiple games, whereas I've had very varied results with the other belts. Our gun convergence is set to 500 meters, the idea being that our machine guns are mounted in the nose and therefore not convergence reliant, and as for our fuel load, we are taking the minimum load of 36 minutes to ensure we can make it to the end of the game, unscaled on fuel capacity. We begin our analysis as always by talking about the aircraft's climb rate. In the case of the Re.2000 G.A, the climb rate of this aircraft is well above average for its battle rating, only falling behind the likes of the Heinkel 100 D1 at a battle rating of 1.7, and then when you look at your higher battle rating opposition, the likes of the Messerschmitt 109 F1 or the C202 EC, this plane will be able to give those aircraft a run for their money all the way up to 4,000 meters altitude. Now the reason this limit comes in is not because 4,000 meters altitude is a limiter on your engine performance. If anything, your maximum altitude limit for your engine is 6,000 meters, at which point you'll note a clear drop off in straight line acceleration and also climb rate. It's that 4,000 meters plus a good number of your opponents at higher battle ratings will have engines that are more thoroughly optimized to perform at higher altitudes, and therefore they'll start to leave you behind in the climb race. This isn't something you have to worry about too much, because as we can see here we've already made it to 4,500 meters altitude and we're well on par with the likes of the Hurricane Mark 1 Late, a battle rating 2.7 aircraft who will want to go 1 versus 1 with very shortly. And this means, regardless of what battle rating aircraft you are facing, you can very quickly push for altitude dominance over the opposition, or contest it at the very least. In this instance, when we go into our contest against the Hurricane, we want it to be a 1 versus 1 and for all of our engagements to be isolated engagements, simply because this is a turn fighter in my experience, not a boom and zoom fighter. Now the idea being here is that we're going to capitalise on the manoeuvrability of this aircraft and its ability to conserve energy thoroughly in the horizontal. As we come in from above, we have the energy advantage and we're going to force the Hurricane to frustrate what energy they've got left. To do so, we're going to set up a set of rolling scissors here, where the Hurricane's trying to get guns on us, we're trying to get guns on them, we're almost getting guns on targets at this point, but we need to be wary of the fact that we're holding on to a lot of energy, and we need to bleed it out without forcing ourselves into the firing line of the Hurricane's 8 7.7mm machine guns, as to do so would be fatal, more on that in a bit. and in the end as the Hurricane goes into the vertical, for what we thought may have been a loop at first, but instead they've come out of the loop and gone into a split S, we can see that they've run out of energy, and now we can start to come around on their 6, using our very powerful rudder to do so. As we start to rip into them on the tail end, we can see that we need to be very accurate with our guns, as we've only got 2 in the nose and they demand precision to work. And we pick up a slight hit in the first of 2 loops now, and as we continue to close the distance on the Hurricane and get our guns on target, we finally dispatch their pilot for our first kill as we went into the second loop. Over the course of that engagement, what you'll have seen in terms of manoeuvrability is that the turn circle of the Re.2000 G.A is on par with the likes of the Spitfire Mark 1A and the Key 61 Mark 1, the Otsu variants that you'll be seeing at a batter rate in a 2.3. The turn circle of the Hurricane is superior when you've got full flap deployment, but this is only by a small margin, and the planes that will be outturning this aircraft are the likes of the Key 27 Otsu and the I-16s that you'll see around 2.0. This puts you in a prime position to turn fight with the vast majority of your opposition, whereas as we now look towards the Spitfire Mark 2A climbing up towards us, this plane does not handle as well in a high-speed dive, particularly when we're trying to force our opponents to stall out underneath us, and then we'll try to rip them apart as they hang limp in the air. And as we come down the Spitfire, note that we're going above 450 km an hour, and this is a special limit on this aircraft, in the fact that 2 of your control surface domains begin to lock up instantaneously, meaning that we had difficulty in following the path of the Spitfire despite their lack of evasion, and in the end we only managed to score a couple hits rather than a complete knockout. So we're going to have to force them to hang out again in front of us and go for a second pass, taking some grazing fire from their machine guns but nothing serious, and now we come down and finish the job, picking up kill number 2. Now let's continue with quantifying our control surfaces for the ideal situation of a medium speed turnfight. Your roll rate is good, not the best. There's going to be a good number of aircraft, particularly at lower batter ratings, i.e. the biplanes that you'll face that have superior roll rates. But you'll find that your roll rate gives you the ability to change directionality on the fly at an equal rate at least with the vast majority of your monoplane opposition. Unfortunately, between 450 and 650 km an hour, you will lose 75% of your roll rate, and this will make the plane very difficult to handle in a high-speed dive, particularly as you go beyond 650 km an hour. And this also adds one other issue. Now right now, we're moving along at a speed in excess of 500 km an hour, and you've probably already guessed it, that means the roll rate of this aircraft is compromised in level flight if you give it enough time to build up speed to chase down a foe a long distance, such as B-25 Mitchell. And therefore, responding when you've got someone on your 6 who's coming in fast and you're going at quite a significant speed, even 475 km an hour, will be delayed on the roll rate of this aircraft simply because you've hit that lockup threshold in the first place, so it's something to keep in mind. As we're trying to bring down the B-25 here, we're not going for an outright kill on them, we just want to set them on fire. If the fire's going to burn them down, great. Alternatively, if the fire causes critical damage and gradually forces them down to lower altitude, our teammates to finish them off, that's also great. Because we're not a bomber hunter at the end of the day, but we want to be an annoyance to enemy bombers, so that way they have to go to lower altitude and compromise their safe haven up on high. Because we lack the overall firepower unless we go for a cockpit pass in order to bring them down in a singular pass, and sitting behind the bomber for an extended period of time can lead to fatal results on our end simply because we lack the durability to stay behind them and take the fire from their rearward gunners. But again, more on that a bit later. So coming back to manoeuvrability and control surfaces, moving on to the rudder of this aircraft, as you've already seen, is very strong. To the point that this plane has one of the best rudders at its batter rating, and it has the ability to flat turn very quickly, alternatively use its rudder to improve its turn circle even further in a downward turn, or on top of that hammerhead very well, as we saw against the Spitfire Mark 2A. The difficulty again with the rudder is at 450 km an hour you start to experience your high speed lockup, going through to 600 km an hour where you've lost 75% of your rudder's performance. Now combine this with the lack of roll rate beyond 650 km an hour, and that means that making precise attacks in this plane when going into a high speed dive is extremely difficult when your opponent just slightly moves offline. And even when you're trying to follow a foe who's not proven evasive, such as this Messerschmitt 109 ML1, it can prove difficult simply because you lack the controllability to make those very slight adjustments that give you the final shot on target. And as for the elevator, this is again strong. The only downside of the elevator is it loses performance below 300 km an hour, particularly in terms of looping. Your looping circle within your ideal speed range of 300 to 400 km an hour is fantastic. It's one of the strongest looping circles at the batter rating, comparable to the strongest loop circles, i.e. the P-36C Hawk, which I always quote. But the downside is, when you go below 300 km an hour, you'll find that your looping circle decays dramatically, and this plane starts to hang in the air. If you go below 250 km an hour before conducting your loop, you're going to have serious issues, where you are literally going to hang your aircraft out to dry. Outside that, in a high-speed dive, what you will find is, when you go to 600 km an hour, you start to experience your high-speed lockup, which extends all the way through to 800 km an hour, and you will lose 25% of your elevator's performance. which means that whilst you lose your ailerons and also your rudder in high speed dives, you do not lose your elevator as such, and therefore you have the ability to quickly pull out of the dive if needs be, or quickly switch into a high speed loop to get the opponent who's on your 6 off of your 6. Or conversely, if you're following someone and they decide to try and conduct a loop in a high speed dive, they're not going to be able to shake you that easily, because you can cleanly follow them. So this makes it very difficult for you to utilise high speed scenarios in order to get the most out of this aircraft, unless your opponent is literally hanging there limp in the sky, as we have seen with the Messerschmitt 109 ML1 just previously, and then earlier on the Spitfire Mark 2A in the second pass. We're now going to another turn fight against a lag-free 35 here, and again we're going to use our superior manoeuvrability across the control surface domains and natural turn circle to gradually turn this around and gain the advantage. As we can see, the lag-free 35 is coming with a lot of speed, and it means they're looping very well at the moment and we can only follow them. As time goes on here, we're cutting our loop sideways and using our rudder to quickly bring the plane around, because what I'm conscious of is the fact that if this engagement goes on for too long, someone on the enemy team is going to get involved and this becomes a 2 versus 1, which is not something that we want. And as we're scoring hits on the lag-free 35, we're gradually having to chip away at their health state as they continue to conduct a series of loops, not to their favour, and we'll gradually whittle them down via that means, hopefully going for the pilot snipe. But here it looks as though they've finally run out of energy. Now we can tuck in nice and tight and start to rip into them. And here you're going to see me completely miss the target when they fly level for a little bit. And this is going to emphasise again the requirement of precision when opening fire with your machine guns, as I'm aiming slightly over the target at this point, missing the majority of my fire, and then I correct to knock out the pilot for another kill. Going for a reload, we've got ample ammunition remaining, and it is worth noting that the fire rate of your machine guns is actually quite low. And the fact that you fire 700 rounds per minute compared to a Browning 50 cals 750 rounds per minute. This means that you're not going to exhaust your ammunition as rapidly as you may expect, and with 300 rounds per gun or 600 in total, you'll have ample ammunition for a given engagement. Just be aware of the fact that if you're not too accurate, you may need a reload before your next engagement, simply because you've exhausted so much ammunition. And one other thing that forces you to get in close with your machine guns is the fact that the muzzle velocity is in the region of 765 meters per second. Again, by comparison with your Browning competition, their muzzle velocities are in the region of 875 meters per second, so it's a significant difference, and that means that at longer ranges, unless you're attacking a target such as this PBY Catalina, you can predict the path of because they're not going to be too evasive in the long term. Opening fire on targets in excess of 500 meters is not going to yield the best results, and yes, you're the most accurate pilot in the sky. And here, whilst we're chipping away at the Catalina, we can see that we're not doing considerable damage and we are forced into a stall. With our stall speed being 130 km an hour, and the stall recovery of this aircraft coming in 2 forms. It's very poor naturally, in the fact that if you let this plane just stall out and recover naturally, you'll find that the aircraft prop hangs on its engine for a long period of time and will gradually get its nose down and build up its speed to 170 km an hour before it can go again. Alternatively, you need to force the nose of this aircraft down, and one of the nice things when you go into a stall is you will still have full control of the negative G response of the elevator, meaning you can very quickly force the nose down and go again. And that's what we did against the PBY, get the nose down, build up the speed and attack them once more. And that combines well with your straight line acceleration, which is average at best all the way from stall speed to 375 km an hour, or with war emergency power 450 km an hour. But because you do not need too much speed for this plane to be able to start manoeuvring, again the ideal speed range is 300 to 400 km an hour. If you want to start your manoeuvres around 275 km an hour, you'll be alright for the purposes of hunting down a bomber or just chasing someone in a straight line, then you're not going to have too much difficulty and you'll quickly recover from a stall state. Here we come down on the blending Mark IV and we're avoiding following them closely because of their rearward machine guns. The idea being, and now we come on to the concept of durability, the Re.2000 G.A lacks the overall durability to be able to sit behind a foe. Now a single burst of one of the rearward machine guns there, we took considerable damage on our engine cowling. And what I found is that the engine of this aircraft is susceptible to taking damage, and normally when it gets hit, it's not a case it will just go yellow, it will normally go red or be knocked out in the first instance. And as for the fuselage of this aircraft, it will very quickly fall apart from sustained heavy machine gun fire or a long period burst from light caliber machine guns. And as for 20mm plus caliber cannon, forget about it, this plane is going to get absolutely shredded. And one other thing to note, if this plane does catch fire, it's got a very high chance of just bursting into flames and falling out of the sky, because you have 4 fuel tanks all mounted very close together, all in the centre of the aircraft, 2 underneath where the pilot sits and 2 behind the cockpit. So if one gets ignited, then the rest are most likely to ignite in a chain. With the durability covered then, we don't want to get hit wherever possible. What else is there to note? Well, in terms of dive speed acceleration, as we're gradually coming down on the MiG-3 underneath us, who seems to be struggling with engine performance, perhaps some damage they've taken from one of our allies earlier on, so we're just going to chip in to try and finish them off or put them in a more crippled state, as they prove a little bit annoying here and they come up to do a head-to-head with us and we want to avoid the incoming fire, so we'll snap around very shortly. In a high speed dive, in building up your speed, what you'll find is that your dive acceleration is average, where you can get towards your maximum dive speed of 878 km/h initially at a decent rate, but your dive speed acceleration falls off when you go beyond 700 km/h, and it will take you an excruciating amount of time to get to this maximum limit. So in return, really, you only really want to go into a dive for a short period of time to build up a little bit of speed and perhaps chase off that foe who's going to dive away from you in the long term. Just force them away and tell them don't come back unless you want to turn fight me. When the MiG-3 coming crashing into the ground right now, we're going to be picking up an assist, confirming our suspicions that their engine was severely damaged from earlier. We move on now to look towards the horizon and look for another opportunity to go into a 1 versus 1. Because really that's what we've been focusing on isolated individuals wherever possible in order to avoid the risk of another foe coming in and ruining our day, and at the same time giving us ample time to rip apart our foe at peace and leisure. The idea being that if we feel comfortable in this aircraft with its wonderful control surfaces, then it becomes an art in a way of being able to just focus on one individual at a time, get them into a turn fight and use all the advantages this plane has in order to dispatch them. As we come around, let's talk about energy retention, something we haven't covered yet. For the purposes of boom and zoom or dives in the vertical, what you'll find is that your vertical energy retention is decent, but only for short distance. In the fact you're able to retain all of your energy if you go into a boom and zoom dive over a distance of 1 to 1.25 kilometers, but beyond that you're really going to suffer in the boom and zoom department, which is why this plane is brilliant for stalling out aircraft at short distances, as we saw with the Spitfire Mark II-A and the Messerschmitt 109 ML1. But longer distance boom and zoom is not going to work, and this does really tailor into the fact that you lack the firepower to make it work in the first instance. As for straight line energy retention, so you come out of a high speed dive, going all the way from say 5,000 meters altitude to 500 meters altitude, and then you fly level, this is an absolute weakness of this aircraft. It really struggles to hold on to its speed when coming out of a high speed dive. And what you'll find is you only start to really hold your speed below 455 km/h in that instance. And in return, that means if you have someone on your 6 chasing you, in the first instance, because of your average dive speed acceleration, you're not exactly going to get away from the foe, you'll just keep them at arm's length, and as you level out at low altitude, you'll find that your speed decays off dramatically and your foe will start catching up with you, again encouraging you to force the situation into that 1 versus 1 turn fight wherever possible. We've already spoken about the horizontal energy retention being strong, and as we come down now looking towards the Yak-1, we're having to pick targets that are likely to fly in a straight line or we can surprise, simply because our foes are proving caught up in the dogfight of our allies, and therefore we don't want to run the risk of trying to follow an opponent such as this Yak-1 in a high speed turn, which we cannot afford because we don't have the controllability. And in the end we lock onto the P-38, who will be coming out of a turn and then most likely not paying attention, and will go for the cockpit in a slightly off angle head to head. It'll be the last kill of the game as we open fire, rip them out of the cockpit, 6th kill, game ends, and it's time for the post game stats. While 6 kills and 3 assists, we're able to pick up 8,717 silver lions and 1,984 research points. To defeat the Re.2000 G.A in a given matchup, I can recommend one of 3 approaches. Firstly, to turn fight with this aircraft if your aircraft has the superior turn circle and the greater manoeuvrability across its control surfaces in all 3 domains. The biplanes this aircraft will face, such as the I-153, and monoplanes such as the I-16, will have this advantage to do so. The second option, if you have 20mm caliber cannon in the nose or higher caliber weaponry, is to go head to head at extended ranges and rip the Re.2000 G.A out of the sky before it can return fire with a limited range on its 12.7mm Breda-SAFAT machine guns, which in a head to head only really extends out to 750 meters in my experience, whereas the 20mm cannon on the likes of the Lag-38 or the VG-33C1 will be able to bring this aircraft down at distances in excess of 1.2 kilometers. The final consideration is if you lack the manoeuvrability to outmaneuver this plane in a medium to low speed engagement and it's close behind on your 6, and that is to go into a high speed dive, getting the speed of the dive beyond 600 km/h, at which point the control surfaces of the Re.2000 G.A will be compromised in terms of both the rudder and the ailerons, at which point you may also experience lock-up on your own aircraft, but it will not be as severe typically, and then you can use a high speed turn or manoeuvre in general to try and break away or get around on the 6 of the Re.2000 G.A and rip them out the sky in a single pass. But by avoiding such circumstances today, hopefully we've demonstrated that the Re.2000 G.A is a capable turn fighter, which in my experience works best in an altitude range of 1,500 to 3,000 meters. The idea being if you go high, you start to give your opponents the advantages that their engines may want in terms of altitude performance, albeit do keep in mind that your altitude maximums on both your engine and your control surfaces are 6,000 meters. You'll see a degradation of performance from that point onwards. and going below 1,500 meters altitude can make you prone to ending up in a furball, which due to your lack of durability and firepower can take away your plane's life. And this is much like the preceding Series 1, the only difference between the two aircraft being, with the GA being slightly heavier because of the additional internal fuel tanks, this actually takes away some of the instability of the aircraft below 250 km an hour, particularly on the elevator. And in return, it means that the initial response of the GA's control surfaces is slightly heavier compared to the Series 1. So if you're looking for the most flexible turret fighter, I'd recommend the Series 1. If you're looking for the more stable aircraft that doesn't really feel as though it's been punished by the additional fuel tanks, then I'd go with the GA. It's up to you. But do keep in mind that if you're flying the GA, the additional fuel you have means that you'll always be fueled for a fight. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. But until next time, as always, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies.